This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Looking good today, John Brummett, looking good.
Well, I try. This is about the best I can do. You're looking sharp as always.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Bathed, signed, sealed, delivered. I'm yours for the question asking. All right. We've learned this last week in the ongoing Trump Mar-a-Lago saga that the affidavit has been unsealed, greatly redacted, but still there's enough there to figure out what's going on. I feel like the goalposts in this story just keep getting moved around. Now the affidavit being revealed is not enough. It was, we need to see the search warrant. Now we need to know what the probable cause was. What's your take on the shifting narrative here? And just, I mean, can you draw any conclusions at this point?
About the case? Well, I don't draw any new ones. They're the same ones I've had. About the case itself, Donald Trump took off from the White House with classified documents he should not have taken off with, stored them at his joint down there, had to be asked, pressured to send back some, messed around and wouldn't agree to send back more, wound up getting his home searched because the National Archives was concerned to the point that it activated the Justice Department. That's it. That's it. Either you think, well, good, he ought to be able to take all the classified documents he wants and treat them any way he wants, or he shouldn't. I say he shouldn't. Whether that's indictable, I don't know. I don't want to say. But that's the story. Now, in matters like this, the investigators, federal investigators, are not to talk about the case for fear of prejudicing their own position or prejudicing the defendant or the person being investigated. Let the facts come out. But the story became, this nation is so horribly divided, and this is such an extraordinary thing that we've got to explain to the people why this happened. I opposed that notion at the time. I oppose it now because the affidavit comes out. You want to know the upshot of the affidavit? People who previously believed Trump ought to be indicted say, look here, we told you, look what he did. People who are on Trump's side say, look here. They say they went to these rooms and these rooms. How did they know to go there? Well, everything's blacked out before that. There's no coherent narrative here. They've blacked out everything. This is worthless. This doesn't prove anything unless by blacking it out, it makes it even more suspicious. So have we gained anything in terms of investigative insight that serves the nation's divide? No. We've just poked at it, made it worse. So I mean, there is not enough supportive information in that affidavit to change anybody's mind. It told you in unredacted parts, yeah, they did that because, yeah, here's the situation. But here's all this blacked out area, which would maybe put that in more context. So we get more information, less context, more facts, less information worthy or helpful toward a judgment. And it's just typical of where we are politically and culturally right now.
You mentioned that as a divisive issue. Another divisive issue that's been swirling in national politics this past week has been the student loan debt forgiveness that President Biden signed into there. I guess I'd like your take on that. I'd also like for you to just make some sort of prediction. What do you think Bubba over there in the used car sales lot would think about this student loan debt forgiveness?
Oh, Roby, what a great minds, I got to tell you. This is a week in which I have to produce an extra column for next Tuesday so that I and the editor may have Labor Day off. I always on those occasions call my old friend Bubba McCoy and do an extra column based on what he's thinking. And when I called him, when I'm going to call him Wednesday, I've already written it. And it's going to say I called him Wednesday. When I'm going to call him Wednesday, he's going to be locked and loaded because he's going to say, look here, I toted all these car notes all this time. I guess I should have charged people a lot more than the car was worth. And then just let the government, Joe Biden, come in and pay off their loan for them, giving me all that money I overcharged and taking them off the hook for debts they incurred. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work in Joe Biden's world? So that's what Bubba says about it. Now, he wants to know what I say about it. And I tell him, see, you just happened on this thing. I tell him, this thing is so complex, and the Republicans have done such a good job of spinning this as an attack on the working man. There are reasons, there's context. Higher education is horribly overpriced in this country. That's problem one, and we need to do something about that. But there are people who practiced their education ethic and who have had to go into the world with burdensome, oppressive debt, and this forgives a part of it. It's not a horrible attack on the working man. It's not socialism, but you can reasonably disagree. And you disagree on the point that Bubba presents, which is debts are to be repaid. Costs are to, price gouging, which you could argue that higher education is doing with some of the admission charges, is not to be rewarded. This is the government ill-serving the situation. So yet another divisive issue that we're gonna, you want how this works out politically? I think there are a whole lot of people who may want to vote Democratic because they got some very helpful relief on their student loans. I think there are a whole lot more working folks going to get stirred up by the notion that certain people get bailed out on their debt, fueled by the Republican rhetoric on this. That'll fire up the other side. These midterms get more and more interesting nearly every week in terms of who's going to turn out, who's going to be motivated. So, aren't you glad you asked what Bubba thought on that?
Yeah. So the Democratic hopes for the midterm, I've been reading some over the last several days. There seems to be this, I guess, among political insiders in Washington, D.C., there seems to be a belief that they might actually hold the U.S. Senate. Democrats might, or at least, keep it where it's at. And that there are prospects in the House, which once looked like a potential 60-seat landslide for Republicans, may now be down into single digits for Republicans. And who knows what happens between now and then. What's changing this hope for the Democrats in the midterm? One,
the abortion issue. I can tell you about the New York 19th Congressional District. It's from the New York City exurbs up into the Catskills, the Hudson Valley. It has voted, as the nation has voted, in presidential races as long as I've been checking, as long as I checked, which was back to Clinton, Bush 1. It's voted for Bush 2. It's voted for Obama. It's voted for Clinton over Dole. It's been right there with the nation. Had a Democratic congressman, he quit, had a special election last week to fill the seat for the remainder of this brief remainder of the term. 6 weeks ago, the Democrat was down several points, maybe even in some polls double digits. Roe v. Wade came out. The Democrat shifted to make that his entire campaign focus, disagreeing with the ruling, calling it too extreme. Then Trump's troubles, personal troubles with the January 6th Commission intensified, and then this whole Mar-a-Lago documents thing. And this Democrat got to the point, at one point he called Trump's actions in regard to the documents traitorous. Third thing that happened is that the Democrats started actually doing a few things. They managed to scale back that bill back better to something Manchin and Sinema voted for. They passed it, Medicare negotiated prices, climate control, things like that. And then I think the student loan, that came after the election. And he won it by 4 points. The Democrat came back to win by 4 points in a pretty heavy turnout. Biden won it over Trump 50-48. This Democrat won it 52-48. And the same group of voters, not identical turnouts. So the conclusions there are clear. It is a representative area of the nation. Things have changed for the Democrats, to the Democrats' benefit. Abortion is the main driver. Trump's problems is a secondary driver. A little bit of a Democratic accomplishment may be a third driver. So that's what's got people the Democrats a little bit encouraged on the House side. I still think they lose the House because that district is a microcosm of the country, but most congressional districts aren't. Why? Because partisan state legislatures have redrawn districts to protect partisan view. So it's rare to see a congressional district like that one that can be a microcosm of the nation. Senate, there's a very good chance the Democrats maintain their 50-50 or gain right now. I think the one main reason is that these Trump recruited, Trump endorsed candidates who are of a celebrity nature have exposed themselves as less than serious. I think that Tommy Tuberville model worked in Alabama, but it's not working right now for Herschel Walker. It's not working in Georgia. It's not working in Pennsylvania for Dr. Oz. I mean, in Pennsylvania, that could be, Republicans need to hold that. They're way down right now. Georgia is a purple state. It's not a blue state, but I think Trump is making it blue for the current purposes. So again, I mean, everything historically in recent times would suggest the out party in this kind of environment will win and perhaps win big. And there are all kinds of factors, and now the student loans enter into it. It may not. If the Democrats, after all they've done, can sort of get a near wash out of this, it'd be a pretty extraordinary story. But you said one thing very important. There's still time left. Can you imagine the things that are happening at the pace they're happening? We need to take this pulse about every 72 hours. You know?
Well, traditionally, after Labor Day is when campaigning actually.
Right. Which may actually enter into this. You think maybe some campaigning would actually.
Well, I do think that there comes some point in time where the cake gets baked, and the cake's not fully baked right now. So I think we still have a lot of elements to kind of keep an eye on in terms of where some things might shift. So, all right, lastly, let's turn to the state of Arkansas, a new Senate ethics filing. It appears this one is against State Senator Stephanie Flowers. What do we know, and what do you surmise from what we know?
Well, this is a better secret kept by the state Senate than federal classified documents. I mean, this is the Senate has not wanted to talk about this, but I've known a couple of weeks what's going on, and I think it's now become obvious in terms of what's publicly available. You remember Alan Clark got cited and sanctioned because he asked a colleague to sign him in for this meeting. He didn't attend. Didn't actually get the money, but he was cited and lost his chairmanship of judiciary, things like that. Then we saw Alan Clark at a Republican function. Do you remember, with wearing the scarlet E for ethics, and he appeared to be spoofing or making light of what had happened to him. What he was doing, I'm pretty sure, is saying, as he has said, this whole ethics regulation is ridiculous. It's just an open invitation for senators to carry out grudges against each other, exploiting otherwise not very big deals in order, and that's what's going to happen. And he's vowed, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I do not believe he thinks Stephanie Flowers ought to be cited for unethical activity or sanctioned. I think he believes, look here, look how silly this is. Look what I can do. I think that's largely what's going on. I can take a set of facts and I can make a case against her. Now the Senate is going, that's kind of frivolous. And there is a provision in the ethics rule saying a senator bringing a frivolous complaint can be cited. So we'll see what happens there. Here are the facts, I think, as we know them. Stephanie Flowers, as you may recall, from Pine Bluff, chose most of the time in the last regular session to Zoom in. She was not present. She was Zooming. The Senate had a system of automatic direct deposits for per diem for days of service in the state and the session. And those went out to the senators. She continued to get it, the automatic direct deposit, for supposed actual travel expenses when she was Zooming. obviously she wasn't incurring travel expenses. Long and short of it is, I'm told she discovered it whenever she looked at her account. She called the Senate staff. The Senate staff said, our error, and she has now paid it back. Okay. Now, I don't know if there's more detail about how quickly she paid. I don't know. That's the long and short of it. And I think Clark is trying to make a point that I don't think is very well made. And the senators are going, my goodness, this back and forth is destructive. And I've heard many people close to the Senate, not many senators are talking at all, but close to the Senate saying, Helen, this is the absolute worst subject, the worst target you could choose, meaning Stephanie Flowers, based on the set of facts. And do you remember, Roby, that Alan Clark and Stephanie Flowers have an internationally viral history? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. So
there's the Stanger
Judiciary Committee. So.
Huh? Who was? Yeah, she was. There's an internationally viral video based on the fact that Clark and other conservatives were pushing a stand your ground law, which Stephanie Flowers said, I happen to agree with her, largely means I can shoot you dead if you scare me. And she is a black woman senator who carries some resentments close to the surface, and she deplores this gun culture, and she went off. She just went off in committee with a little bit of profanity, and Clark said to her famously, Senator, you need to stop talking, and she said more famously, what are you going to do, shoot me? This was all in a video which went internationally viral. Now, that's just a snapshot, but why take a chance of poking that kind of history with this case? It's got I always want peace and tranquility to prevail, and I hope that the Senate Ethics Committee can find some Solomonic way to put this aside. And we should find out in a week or two, because they've had an initial meeting and they'll be writing a report with some findings. So seems to be what that's all about.
All right. He's John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. He's always got an opinion. He's always happy to share that opinion. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I'm willing to share it. Let's say that when you ask for it. And thank you for doing so. All right, buddy. See you.